Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mostly Unstructured Podcast. I'm Clay Tuten, CMO at KeyMark, and I'm joined today by a very special guest, Mike Askren, VP of Product at Hyland. Mike, thanks for joining me, dude.
Glad to see you. It's good to be together again.
Absolutely.
And,
Got a lot to talk about today.
Got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so we're going to kick it off, just kind of a theme here around the transition and the evolution, if you will, of document management, ECM, into this intelligence layer. And so I know you've got a lot of knowledge here. Really glad that you're joining me today because I'm looking forward to what you have to share with us. So you ready to get started?
I am. Let's dive into it.
Let's do it, man. I'm going to focus today on this topic of document management and ECM, right? How that's been the table stakes for so long. Most organizations already have it, but then it's moving toward this intelligent layer and unpacking some of that, right?
Yeah.
So I think for years enterprises have treated content really, I gotta store this stuff, I gotta secure it, and then I gotta retrieve it at some point. And that's been the simple way to put it. But we've got this conversation change where, all right, we know where we're putting it, but we're moving now to what are we doing with it? How are we getting intelligence out of it? And the real value isn't in the file itself, but in what's in the file and the intelligence you can gain from that. So I think most organizations are sitting on tons of unstructured content. You guys talk a lot about that. When you're defining unstructured content in the Hyland terminology, probably the same as everybody else, that what does that look like when you guys are talking about unstructured content from a Hyland perspective?
Yeah, it's very much as you said, the information embedded within the page, which then becomes knowledge embedded in the page. And you're getting down to the paragraph and sentence level semantics of that information and the relationships, not only within that particular document, but across the body of content. It might have relationships within the system or even other systems.
Okay.
So being able to tap into that, you're certainly hearing more terminology around curation and vectors and chunks. They're kind of new terms for a lot of folks in the industry. And being able to really extract the insight and organize it in a way that's meaningful for this new intelligence layer to provide value to users or to systems, driving optimizations, automation, and efficiencies.
So your role here at Hyland, give me a little bit of color around that, just so that everybody knows who's giving this intelligence to us.
Sure. So yes, I have ownership of the ECM portfolio at Hyland, both the core ECMs, as we might reference them, of OnBase, Alfresco, Nuxio, Perceptive Content, as well as our cloud platform capability that's sort of delivering some of this new intelligence layer on top of it.
Okay.
And
then how is that working together with the new kick, and like just a little bit of that would be helpful?
Great question. So the key sort of intermediary in that equation is content federation.
Right.
And that is how we're providing connectivity from these new AI and intelligence services to the content where it resides today. Yeah. Whether that's on-prem self-managed in a hyperscaler in a cloud, or wherever it might exist today.
And I love the fact that Hyland has continued to really, and then this year in the keynotes, double down on the value of content. You guys talk about the content delivery agentic. What's your term for that again? The content, you guys were talking about
the agentic
enterprise.
The content fueled agentic enterprise.
Yeah, sorry. I had it down pat, but I thought that was really cool the way that you guys talked about that.
Yes.
And then saying, hey, like AI is great, but where the gold is, like it's just about extracting that. And I think there's been the evolution of ECM where the digitization, right? You just got to digitize it, and then kind of a second phase is your workflows, your automations, et cetera. But now this intelligence piece, when we say intelligence, and we throw that term, like we all throw that term around a lot.
It's about as broad as cloud.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So from a Hyland perspective, or from at least this ECM I don't want to say legacy isn't a bad thing, but that's been a heritage is probably a better word, a CCM heritage. The value of content, when we're talking about intelligence, I think it's really helpful to explain to people what that means, right? That extracting meaning and what else? Like it's more than just extracting meaning. Like there's so much value beyond just that.
Yes, there's certainly the aspect of insights across that information that might turn into sort of analytics across your content, which sort of gets into a data analytics. And what we've really been promoting is for our ECM owners in organizations to start having conversations with their data architects and their AI architects around how you can make that information available to fuel, not only knowledge and awareness across the organization, but also automation concepts, built upon the years of history of both documents and process decisions through that.
Yeah, because I think, which Tesh was talking about in his keynote, they're only able to see 15 to 30%. I think it was his stat, of the content, and just being able to expose that opens up massive levels of intelligence to that buried data. And then the agents, like, we talk about agents a lot. And the human element, we did another podcast earlier with the human element and I like how you guys constantly reiterate the value of the human in a loop.
Yes. So I think maybe to your first point in terms of the amount of information and data available in an organization, anywhere from 70 to 90% of that is still in an unstructured form in an ECM repository that frankly has not really been paid attention to by a lot of the other roles and functions in an organization. Roughly 15 to 20, maybe 30% of information in an organization is in a structured format. And so it's kind of untapping this, this mass of information and being able to marry that together to generate this enterprise context. And we reference that as our enterprise context engine,
right?
But it's not so much about the engine. It's about the information and the relationships between it that can help make agents more intelligent, such that they can reason and understand new documents coming into the solution and data coming into the solution, and understands how it might relate to an entity in a system, whether that's a citizen applicant, a student, someone applying for services through an organization, whatever it might be, the tie together of that and the context around that.
You guys did a really good job this week of showing really specific use cases that I think help people's kind of like aha moment. Like, okay, so if I'm in healthcare, this agent can look at, my situation and escalate it to get a referral and move that through a lot quicker, pulling context in from other visits and other information, and making that available to the care provider, and then just the speed of that. And then Ed and I were talking about this earlier. It's so nice that it's not just giving you the feedback; it's also giving you context. So this is why I pulled this. This is where it came from, so that you're not just having to blindly trust it. And I think this is where the agentic conversation comes in around agentic governance, right? Like, so you have to, we've talked about governance on here quite a bit on our podcast in a broad sense, specifically around, security, the content, who's got access to it, all those good things. But then you guys have started really kind of carving off and talking about the governance of agents. I think that's really important to unpack that.
Yeah, it is very important, and it ties into the kind of human in the loop feedback component a little bit as well.
Okay.
So in terms of gaining efficiencies, historically, kind of across the solution space in ECM, it's been about getting the right document set in front of the right person so that they can review dozens of pages of information. And that might take them 5, 10, 15, an hour to review something really complex to get to the decision criteria. So if the agents in the background can prepare that information and decision criteria, put it in front of the user the moment they open the item, the case to work, they're able to make that decision more effectively. But they can also give feedback that, hey, I believe this may be incorrect,
right,
and sort of thumbs down that response,
right.
And that's input to
the agent.
The agent.
Yeah.
But then maybe going a little bit further into this topic of governance. Historically in the space, governance has had a very specific meaning to content and data governance. Access control combined with lifecycle stage management of content, and when you might ultimately decide to disposition that or put a legal hold on it, right? Kind of the expanded realm of that with governance is now governance of these agents acting on behalf of users, or maybe independent of a user context, but in the same level of intelligence as a user, evaluating content, evaluating decisions, and providing recommendations. And the agent governance layer really provides the opportunity to be able to give control to administrators. We call that our control tower in our particular stack, but in a more general concept, it's the ability to monitor agents and what they're doing, and just stop that activity if there's any indication based upon various metrics that either it's taking longer to do given processes, which might mean there's a new input into the equation, whatever it might be. You think of it in the way that you might have monitored other systems historically with analytics and dashboarding tools. The same thing for an agent, and really having oversight of them, and the ability to terminate an agent that might be hallucinating or might be following the instructions that it was given, but those instructions may no longer be valid, or may have been provided insufficiently, in the initial setup of the agent.
I hate to break it down too much, but it sounds like a digital employee in a way. Like you have to, like if an employee is not doing their job, you have to go say, hey, that's not actually how you do it. They improve, they learn.
Right.
And then if that's just not working out, then you have to make a change.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm trying to bring a little bit of
coaching.
human.
It's coaching of agents.
Yeah. The termination is a strong term. Like you're terminated. But no, I think it's kind of helpful to see it in that light. We interact a lot with, I'm sure you guys do too, with the CIOs, CDOs, the C-suite of technology decision makers, right? And they have a really tough job. I was reading an article recently where they're just under scrutiny constantly, and there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of stress if you're in that position. And I think it's important, we maybe just take a minute to speak to them and go, hey, listen, here's 1, 2, 3 things you should be focused on, right? Let's walk through that to kind of help them. All right, because I think they feel like they have so much coming at them. And that's one thing we try to pride ourselves on, is breaking it down. Like your list, you have a lot of voices, you're reading articles, your board's probably making demands of you. You're just trying to pull out some nuggets of information. Maybe you've even deployed something and it's not working well. What do you got to say to those folks?
I would say that everyone is facing this new tool available to them, and technology and AI. We've been through these hype cycles before. And oftentimes you have a new technology that you're looking for a problem to solve with. Take a moment to step back, and the problems you have in your organization. And it's probably areas that you've already been trying to improve historically and have been successful at that to some degree. But how can you drive more efficiencies for humans that are performing those activities, or further perform full automation, within a system, within constraints, within boundaries of limits and so forth, to allow that to occur. So I think, the kind of the trend that you're mentioning and the pressure, I think I've seen recently that, the average tenure of a CIO is something like 24 months, which was quite alarming to me to even think about that, but it is sort of this pressure for complete transformation. And I think there's a real opportunity to to make impactful and practical changes.
Yeah.
And adopting this new technology and understanding the benefits.
Yeah.
What we're often seeing is when you're trying to do a really large, complete re-envisioning of everything, that it stalls the progress of that and effectively delays the return on the investment.
Burn.
It's just a slow burn.
Yeah. That's really good insight. I think we like to, and I want to see if you disagree or agree with this. Like, we've been kind of taking this approach, like, you can do a lot of different things, but it's important to find the right problem, but don't try to start with the largest problem.
Correct.
It's like, usually if you can just get a win, and there's actually some pretty, I don't want to say easy, but there's some pretty right opportunities to, in your processes that you don't even know.
Right.
So sitting down with someone who understands and letting them just ask questions, find out what you're really struggling with. And oftentimes that's the impetus that just gets the snowball going. Instead of trying to roll the big snowball in one, like, you ever build a snowman, right? Like, anybody that's done that before knows, like, it's kind of get it going. You don't start with the big pile of snow. But anyways, I digress. But I think that's important to help people understand that. Do you feel like that's a fair assessment, or would you say, no, I think there's times where you need to go all in?
I would completely agree. It's human nature to identify the biggest, most complex thing that you might actually.
Why do you think that is?
You might actually do it on an infrequent basis.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's why it's still this big, complex thing, because it doesn't occur frequently enough on a day-to-day basis.
That makes sense. That's fair.
And so you haven't already tried to improve it to a degree that it's manageable.
So they're picking the nastiest one, you mean? Like, just the most
that's kind of the natural thought.
It is, yeah.
But rather than looking at the things that you do most often every day that are kind of mundane,
right?
But are there opportunities within those to create, if you do a 15-minute task 200 times a day, if you can turn that into a 2-minute task 200 times a day, that's a pretty big time savings every day for that individual performing that role and that function. And they're more, instead of being in the role and function of reviewing a bunch of information, you're effectively reviewing the key decision criteria and making a decision. Kind of back to my earlier example. And I think that's the real opportunity to have some easier, more manageable to deliver wins than trying to solve the problem that you've not really touched previously, but only occurs maybe once a month at the close of the month or something. Those are, not that those aren't worthwhile to solve.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's not where you would normally think.
Right.
I mean, that's not what you would immediately go towards.
Right.
So I do want people to understand that, like, because it is tempting to make a big splash. And I mean, not that there's egos behind it, but there's pressure behind it.
There's pressure.
And so it, hey, we automated this massive process. Sounds better to a board.
Yeah.
To the shareholders, but at the same time, the ROI and AI that we talk about a lot is really getting in those little, like you said, those little things that are just, they're actually kind of almost obvious that so obvious you don't see it.
Exactly. They're kind of the mundane task that you've sort of just gotten used to doing every day. And in fact, in some ways, that sort of defines the role today. But there's really an opportunity to kind of change the role for that particular function in a business, such that they're spending less time doing this low value work to gather information. Yeah. And they can have the agent or AI in general prepare that information for them to make those decisions.
So we'll start wrapping this up here in a minute, but practical business outcomes, like thinking of faster claims processing or reduced onboarding for HR. You guys have talked about some of those. What are a couple others you're seeing people? I mean, I'm looking at a screen running off camera over here, and it's just got lists of them. There's so many options.
Yes.
What are some of the ones that you guys are seeing? I know HR really is adapting this. I had some conversations this morning about that, and just so much great opportunity there. What are some other ones?
I would say, certainly AP has been a long history of focus for Hyland and our ecosystem alike. but health and human services and government agencies,
Yep.
that are all really stressed for funding right now. And the opportunity to continue to serve this kind of growing demand of digital interaction from citizens and constituents in a way that you don't really have the budget to staff for more,
right.
More FTE for that. And, I think I often look at the opportunity that exists there to meet the growing demand on your organization with the same, investment in terms of systems and resources and people combined, knowing that you continue to need human in the loop decision making in that. So I think there's real opportunity there in those other industries and solutions and verticals where you see this growing kind of demand of interaction and speed to decision is critical to the process.
Yeah, I think you guys, we work together closely, and just being able to help people see what it looks like, demos are great.
Yeah.
But being able to apply it to your own situation is super, super valuable. I think one of the things I want to close on is, I think there's a temptation to have to replace your existing systems or something. And I don't know that that's true, but there may be a use case where that's important, right? I mean, maybe you do need to. I think most organizations that kind of started, said this earlier, they already have some sort of repository system. What's the first step as we kind of put a bow on this? First step for somebody who maybe it's the CEO, maybe it's the CDO, maybe it's the CEO, who knows, an IT leader that's tasked with doing this. Hey, I want to move into that intelligence layer. What are the first steps or questions that is going to get them headed in the right direction? Obviously, we would sit here and say, they need to call one of us, right?
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, just in general terms, what's going to help people take that next step and feel confident about it?
I think there's a couple of key pieces. One that we've sort of already touched on is, where are your most attainable wins? But then closely following that is the data that's inside the documents themselves. So historically, it has been sort of about ensuring that data is secured and sort of, in a digital cabinet, in an ECM platform, and that met the need. But now you're talking about exposing, individual characters on the page to other tools, and understanding what might be housed in those pages that is sensitive or could potentially be misleading to an AI platform that's consuming that information. And beginning to really think about that unstructured content as a data component,
right?
And how you might need to instruct the AI platform as it's consuming and curating that information,
right?
And provide input to it. But then also really understanding any sort of compliance controls that you might have around that, things that might need to be completely ignored, in that curated data set that you're using to fuel this. So
a little Hyland plug here, opportunity, right? If you're a Hyland customer already, and you're not in the Kick, well, we call it Kick, but a content innovation cloud, right?
Content innovation cloud.
If you're not looking into that or already have it, what is the advice to customers to do first? Like, reach out to their rep, obviously that's it, ask questions. But what are they missing by not, guys, I think it's important to go, hey, you're really missing out on a lot of intelligence. That's great, that's big, that's broad. Yes, intelligence, I see the value of that. We've moved from this to this. I think most people are starting to grasp it. I've got a sense of that just being around this year versus last year.
Yeah. I
think as people are starting to really go, instead of kind of bringing them to the conversation, they're kind of coming to the conversation now, which I think is great.
Yes.
But for Hyland customers, like, what are you most excited about? Where should they get excited about?
I think really beginning to understand the opportunity, and maybe a little bit of what you might be alluding to there is we've been doing a lot of discovery workshops with customers and really kind of helping them champion it internally.
Yeah.
And being able to sort of maybe grow their role in the organization,
Yeah, sure.
as the
Absolutely.
champion of this realm of possibility
Right.
that's there. But there are kind of layers of opportunity there. The layer that's probably most easily understood by longtime ECM veterans
Sure.
is IDP.
Right.
Right. We've been doing capture and we've been doing forms of IDP for decades.
Right.
But kind of the advantages with that, but then that's maybe an initial stepping stone.
Right.
And I think the excitement that I'm starting to definitely see percolate here at the event this year is around the opportunities for agentic automation capabilities sort of embedded within existing workflows, and how they can leverage that to further optimize, maybe identify fraud and risk within those workflows. So it's not always about efficiency.
Yeah.
It might be avoiding risk within the process
or building new workflows.
Or building new
don't
workflows.
Have. Like AI is super helpful.
Yes.
It's powerful what you guys have shown. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there are advances both in sort of the in-delivered solution as well as the administration side of the equation, with sort of natural language prompt-based solution administration that continue to advance. So I think that's an interesting frontier for a lot of the admins.
Yeah.
Whereas the business owners are more focused on, efficiency optimizations and outcomes in that equation.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's excellent. And what's really cool is, it's so much of is happening. It's just so fast. We talk about that all the time. It's happening so fast, and it really is easy to get your head just spinning.
Yeah.
Because even just in your last comment there, you talked about we hit 3 or 4 different things that, like, if somebody goes like, "Ooh, I want that. Ooh, I want that." Like you're going to a kid in a candy shop. I want that one, that one, that one, that one. Just take all of it. But we just want to, slow down, ask questions. Like, I think that's the most valuable thing is when I say we're all trying to figure it out, some of us are further along than others. I'm just saying there's constantly evolving. So we're all learning and growing together. Nobody's perfected anything like completely.
Right.
But I think you guys have done just a great job of making this agentic opportunity open to like your entire product line. And then we're super excited about helping people out. Thanks for joining me, man.
Glad to.
Yeah.
It's always a good conversation.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us on the Unstructured Podcast. If we said anything brilliant, it was probably him. Just assume we planned it. We'll see you next time.